Have you ever stopped to truly consider, what happens when you simply utter words?
Hmm.
We often think our language is just, a mirror reflecting the world, right?
Yeah, that's the common view.
Like saying the coffee is hot or the meeting starts at 2. Simple descriptions.
Right, stating facts.
But what if sometimes your words aren't merely describing reality, they're actively creating it, or at least, dramatically altering it?
That's a big what if.
Exactly. Imagine standing at a wedding, looking into someone's eyes and declaring, I do.
Okay.
Are you just reporting on an event like, oh, look, I'm getting married? Or are you, in that very moment, performing the act of getting married?
Okay, I see where you're going. The words are the action.
Right. Or when you say, I bet you $10, are you just stating that a bet exists somewhere?
No, you're making the bet right then and there.
Exactly. You're creating it with the words.
It's a profound thought, isn't it? Those seemingly simple everyday phrases,
Yeah, the ones we barely think about.
often dismissed as just talk, they actually hold an incredible transformative power. They're not just passive descriptions, they're active interventions.
It's truly a paradigm-shifting idea. It really makes you stop and think.
It does.
So get ready, folks, because we're about to plunge into a deep dive. We're looking at one of the most revolutionary concepts in 20th century philosophy, speech act theory.
A really fascinating area.
And we'll be primarily guided by the groundbreaking work of J.L. Austin, specifically his classic book, How to Do Things with Words.
A must read if you get into this stuff, definitely.
Our mission today, well, it's to unpack Austin's brilliant insights. We want to give you a crystal clear, engaging overview.
Even lots of practical examples, that's key.
Absolutely. Examples that will fundamentally change how you think about every utterance you make and every word you hear.
And this isn't just, dry academic theory locked away in an ivory tower.
No way.
Think of it more like gaining a superpower for understanding communication.
Ooh, I like that. A superpower.
Yeah. It's a shortcut, kind of, to decoding the hidden power dynamics. The subtle intentions woven into the fabric of our daily interactions.
So you start seeing conversations differently.
Exactly. Not just as exchanges of information, but as sequences of actions. People doing things to each other with words.
That's right. Imagine, a workplace negotiation. You thought you were just sharing some info,
Uh-huh.
but your words were actually taken as a firm commitment, a promise you didn't mean to make.
Happens all the time. Or the opposite, maybe.
Or, yeah, a simple chat with a friend where a casual remark, something you barely thought about.
Accidentally lands as a profound insult. Or maybe a piece of advice they didn't ask for.
Right. By the end of this deep dive, you'll have the tools, hopefully, to dissect those moments, to maybe prevent misunderstanding,
Decode those hidden intentions.
and frankly, have some serious aha moments about the hidden power in every word.
Definitely some aha moments in Austin.
This is about becoming a more informed listener, a more discerning speaker.
And all without getting bogged down in super dense academic jargon. We'll keep it clear.
We promise. Or should I say, we hereby state our intention to keep it clear.
Huh. See, you're already doing it. So where did Austin even begin? How did he start challenging these really long-held assumptions about language? What was the dominant view he was pushing against?
Well, Auster's really revolutionary idea began by challenging a super deeply ingrained assumption in philosophy, something he tagged as the descriptive fallacy.
The descriptive fallacy.
Yeah, for a very, very long time, especially among philosophers focused on logic.
The logicians.
Exactly. The dominant view was that the main business of a sentence, what they called a statement, was simply to describe a state of affairs, to state some fact.
Okay, straightforward enough.
And crucially, this statement then had to be either true or false. That was the key thing.
So if I said the sky is blue, that's a true statement. If I said the sky is green, that's a false statement. And that truth or falsity was the absolute foundation. Pretty much, yeah. This whole notion of verifiability, can you check if it's true or false against the world? That was the bedrock of logical analysis for ages.
And what about things that didn't fit that mold?
Well, that was the problem. If an utterance couldn't be empirically verified, if it wasn't a factual claim you could prove true or false.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, think about early 20th century philosophy, especially logical positivism. They were really focused on this.
Right, the verificationists. Only science and logic mean anything.
Kind of, yeah. So anything outside that framework,
Yeah.
things that look like statements but couldn't be verified.
Like ethical statements. Murder is wrong.
Exactly. Or God exists. Or even things like hello or ouch. Under that really strict framework, these were often labeled pseudo-statements.
Pseudo-statements, meaning fake statements.
Or sometimes even just nonsense, because they didn't fit the true-false descriptive model. They weren't reporting verifiable facts.
Wow, that's a huge chunk of human communication just tossed aside as meaningless, isn't it?
It really is. Think about it. Questions, commands, warnings, expressions of emotion, ethical advice, religious declarations.
Yeah, it's good to be kind. How do you verify that as true or false?
You can't. Not in the same way you verify the cat is on the mat.
Yeah.
And this is exactly where Austin makes his radical shift.
Okay, so what did he propose?
He questioned whether many of these so-called pseudo-statements were even trying to state facts in the first place. What if their main purpose was something totally different?
Not describing, but doing something else.
Precisely. This is the absolute core of his descriptive fallacy. The fundamental mistake of assuming that all meaningful utterances are primarily descriptions, and therefore must be true or false.
So it's good to be kind. What's his purpose then, according to Austin?
He'd argue it's not trying to describe a verifiable fact about kindness. Its intention is maybe to prescribe conduct like telling you to be kind.
Or maybe just expressing approval of kindness.
Or evincing an emotion? Yeah. Influencing behavior. The traditional philosophical framework just didn't have a good way to account for this functional aspect of language. It was too focused on truth conditions.
Okay, so if these utterances aren't just describing, what are they doing? What did Austin call this new type of linguistic action?
This is where he introduces his big breakthrough concept.
Performatives.
Performatives, okay, sounds important.
It is. He identified this distinct type of utterance. It wasn't nonsense, he stressed, but rather a kind of masquerader. It often looks grammatically like a regular statement, like, I promise, looks like I run, grammatically.
Exactly. But it behaves in a fundamentally different way. He defined performatives with two key characteristics.
Okay, what are they?
First, they do not describe, report, or constate. That was his term for stating facts. They don't state facts in the traditional sense.
Got it. Not describing.
And therefore, crucially, they are not true or false. You can't say, I promise to come is false in the same way Paris is the capital of Spain is false.
Okay, so not true or false. What's the second characteristic?
The uttering of the sentence is, or is an integral part of, the doing of an action.
Ah, the saying is the doing part.
Yes. It's not just saying something.
Yeah.
It's literally doing something with those very words.
And once you start looking for them, they seem to be absolutely everywhere.
They really are. It changes how you hear things.
Let's explore some of Austin's classic examples, because they make this concept incredibly clear for anyone new to this.
It's a good idea. The examples really nail it.
Okay, take the marriage ceremony again. When someone says, I do take this woman to be my lawful wedded wife, they aren't merely reporting on a marriage that's happening separately, right? Like giving commentary.
No, absolutely not. In that very utterance, they are performing the act of marrying. The words, in that specific context, bring the marriage into being.
The words themselves are the action. They create the change.
Exactly. They carry the weight of that transformation. Or, similarly, think about launching a ship.
Right, the champagne bottle smash.
Yeah. And the dignitary stands there and says, I name this ship the Queen Elizabeth.
Okay.
The act of naming is that utterance. The words don't describe some separate naming event happening off stage. They constitute it.
The ship becomes the Queen Elizabeth because those words were said in that way at that time.
Precisely. There's no separate internal mental act of naming that the words are just, reporting on.
Okay, got it. Or think about a legal context, like reading a will.
Yeah, good one.
The phrase, I give and bequeath my watch to my brother. Those words, written in that formal, legally binding document, they actually affect the transfer of property, don't they?
They do. They don't just describe your intention to give the watch or state that you will give it. They enact the giving. It's a legal transaction performed through language.
You're not stating a fact, you're performing a legal move.
Absolutely. And a simpler, more everyday example he uses is betting.
I bet you 6 pence it will rain tomorrow.
Well,
or $10 maybe.
Right. You aren't stating that you are going to make a bet or describing some bet that already exists. You are making the bet right then and there.
The words themselves are the wager. They initiate that commitment.
Yes. And the term performative itself, Austin points out, comes from perform, as in perform an action. It's active.
Makes sense.
He also notes that lawyers sometimes use the term operative for clauses in legal documents.
Operative clauses.
Yeah, the parts that actually affect a transaction rather than just reciting the circumstances or background.
So operative also captures that action-doing nature.
Exactly. It highlights the action-oriented nature of these utterances. So when you think about legal documents, contracts, formal ceremonies, even just everyday promises.
You start noticing these operative or performative phrases everywhere. They're bringing something into being, changing the situation.
That's the core idea. Saying is doing.
Okay, so we've established that saying something can, in itself, be doing something. Powerful stuff. But here's where it gets maybe a bit more complicated. Just saying the words often isn't enough, is it? Austin really stresses this.
Absolutely crucial point. While uttering the words is often, as he puts it, the leading incident of the act,
The main part, yeah.
it's rarely the sole thing necessary. The whole context, the circumstances, the people involved, sometimes even other people's responses, it all has to be appropriate.
Appropriate circumstances. Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
Well, it's a vital clarification. For instance, think about marriage again. In some places, a marriage can actually happen just by cohabiting for a certain time without any specific I-do moment.
Right, common law, marriage.
Exactly. Or you can make a bet by just putting a coin into a slot machine without saying, I bet.
So the words aren't always essential to perform the type of act.
Not always. But they are often a very clear and powerful way to perform the act, provided that the entire conventional framework is in place. The words slot into a pre-existing structure of rules and expectations.
And those necessary conditions, those rules, they can be pretty specific, right?
Oh, absolutely. For naming that ship, it's not enough for anyone to wander along and say the words.
Right. I can't just go down to the docks and start renaming boats.
Exactly. You have to be the appointed person, the one with the proper authority, to actually name her. Otherwise, your words are just noise.
And for a marriage to be valid.
Well, the usual things. You generally must not already be married. You need to be of sound mind, maybe meet age requirements. The officiant needs authority. All those external factors.
So the authority, the identity, the legal status, these are all background conditions that have to hold for the performative words to work.
Precisely. They underpin the utterance. Take betting again. If I say, I bet you $10 and you just stare blankly or shrug and walk away.
The bet hasn't actually been made, has it?
Nope.
Well,
Because usually a bet requires acceptance. The other person needs to say, done, or you're on, or something equivalent. It needs that uptake.
okay. Or a verbal gift saying, I give this to you.
Right. It isn't really considered a completed gift, legally or often socially, unless you actually hand the thing over. The words might initiate the act.
But the physical action often completes it.
Yes. It shows that performatives operate within this whole conventional framework, a set of social or legal conditions that have to be met for the act to be successful, for it to peak, as Austin might say.
Without these appropriate circumstances, the utterance just doesn't achieve its performative goal.
Exactly. No matter how perfectly phrased it is, it just won't work. It misfires.
Okay. And this brings us to another really interesting point Austin makes about the myth of the inward spiritual act.
Ah, yes, that's a great part of his argument.
We often feel that performatives have to be spoken seriously, right? You can't be joking or acting in a play.
True. Seriousness is usually required for the act to be taken at face value in the real world.
But Austin pushes back on the idea that this seriousness just means the utterance is an outward and visible sign of some deeper, hidden, inward and spiritual act. Like the words are just reporting on your true feelings.
Right. He critiques that notion heavily. He uses a famous example from Greek tragedy, Euripides' Hippolytus,
Okay.
where the character, having sworn an oath he regrets, claims something like, "My tongue swore to, but my heart did not."
Ah, the old "my fingers were crossed" defense.
Essentially, yeah. It's often used as a kind of let-out, an excuse for someone like a bigamist saying, I do, or a person making a promise they intend to break.
They claim they weren't really bound because their heart wasn't in it. Their secret inner feeling didn't match the utter words.
Exactly. And Austin argues this provides a really unfortunate loophole for immorality. It undermines the whole point of performative acts like promising or vowing.
If you can always just say, oh, I didn't really mean it deep down, then words lose their binding power.
Precisely. He emphasizes that, for things like promises to work, accuracy and morality dictate our word is our bond. The intention to fulfill the act is considered part of the performative itself. It's assumed by the convention, not some separate hidden mental state that can magically negate the verbal act.
So even if you say, I promise, insincerely, without meaning to keep it,
According to Austin's argument here, you have still performed the act of promising. The act occurred. It might be a deceitful promise, an insincere one, but the promise itself was made. Your secret lack of intention doesn't make the utterance not a promise.
Okay, that's a crucial distinction. The act happens even if it's flawed by insincerity. So if these crucial conditions, the right person, the right context, maybe even the right uptake or sincere intention, if they're absent, how do we talk about what went wrong?
Right. We don't usually say the utterance was false, do we? That feels wrong for "I bet you" or "I named this ship."
Yeah, false promise maybe, but not a false statement in the same way.
Exactly. Austin says instead the act was perhaps void or null or given in bad faith or not implemented or unhappy.
Unhappy utterances. I like that term.
It captures it well. A false promise, for instance, isn't a lie in the standard sense, a misstatement of fact. The promise is made, the words "I promise" are uttered.
But the deceit lies in the absence of intention to follow through.
Correct. The utterance "I promise" isn't itself false, like a factual claim. It's the subsequent action that's missing, or the initial intention was lacking. We don't talk about a false bet or a false christening in quite the same way we talk about a false statement,
But the language we use to criticize these failures is different.
because the very nature of the utterance itself is different. It's not about describing truth. It's about successfully performing an action according to conventions.
Okay, so if performatives aren't true or false, but they can still go wrong, how do we evaluate them? How do we analyze these failures systematically?
This is where Austin introduces his really brilliant framework, the doctrine of infelicities.
Infelicities, meaning unhappinesses.
Basically, yes. It's a way to understand how performative acts can be unhappy, a term that perfectly captures their flawed nature, something other than simply being false.
And how does he break this down? What kinds of unhappiness can afflict our utterances?
He broadly categorizes these unhappy utterances into two main types. First, there are misfires.
Misfires, okay.
In a misfire, the intended act is basically null and void. It just doesn't happen. The attempt fails to come off.
It doesn't achieve its performative goal at all.
Right. The procedure is maybe non-existent, or it's invoked inappropriately, or it's just botched in the execution. The attempted act literally fails to take effect.
Okay, so misfires mean the act is void. What's the second main type?
The second type is abuses.
Abuses. That sounds more like bad behavior.
Kind of. In an abuse, the act is actually performed, it formally takes effect, but it's somehow hollow or insincere.
Ah, so the outward form is there, but the inner state is wrong.
Exactly. The act happens, but without the genuine thoughts, feelings, or intentions that the procedure is supposed to embody. The promise is made, but it's made in bad faith.
Okay, misfires act is void, and abuses act is hollow and sincere. Let's dig into misfires first. What kinds are there?
Austin breaks misfires down further. The first category is A.1, misinvocation, no accepted procedure.
Misinvocation, meaning you're calling on something that doesn't exist.
Pretty much. The supposed conventional procedure you're trying to use simply doesn't exist in the first place, or it isn't accepted in the current context. So the act cannot possibly be performed successfully.
Can you give an example?
Okay, imagine someone in a country with a Christian tradition trying to divorce their spouse by simply saying, "I divorce you," perhaps mimicking a procedure from another culture.
Right, that verbal declaration might be a valid procedure elsewhere, but not here.
Exactly. In that context, the procedure isn't accepted. It doesn't exist within their social or legal code. So the words "I divorce you," however seriously uttered, are void. They don't affect a divorce. It's a misinvocation.
Or trying to challenge someone to a duel today.
Perfect example. The code of honor involving dueling is no longer an accepted procedure in most societies. So issuing the challenge is void. The underlying convention is gone.
It's like trying to knight someone with a plastic sword from a toy shop and saying, "I dub thee Sir Bob." The procedure isn't real in that context.
Precisely. The ritual itself isn't legitimate. Okay, then the second type of misfire is A.2, misapplication. Inappropriate persons or circumstances.
Misapplication. So the procedure exists, but it's used wrongly.
Yes, the conventional procedure is real and accepted, but the particular people involved or the specific circumstances surrounding the utterance are not appropriate for invoking it in this instance. Like saying, "I appoint you consul to your horse," as Austin amusingly suggests.
Okay, appointing exists, but horses aren't the right kind of candidate for consul.
Right. The object is of the wrong category. Or, as we discussed earlier, saying "I do" in a marriage ceremony when you were already legally married.
The ceremony is valid, the procedure exists.
But your personal circumstances, being already married, make it impossible for you to invoke it successfully now. It's misapplied to your situation.
Or trying to sell the Eiffel Tower when you don't own it. The procedure of selling exists, but
It's misapplied because you lack the authority or ownership. The act can't take hold because a fundamental condition tied to the participants or the specific context is missing.
got it. So those are misfires related to the procedure itself or who's involved. What other kinds of misfires are there?
Then we move to the B category of misfires, which are more about flaws in the execution of the procedure. First is B1, flaws, incorrect execution.
Flaws. So everything else is right, procedure exists, people are appropriate, but you mess up the actual doing of it.
Exactly. The procedure is generally okay, the people and circumstances are suitable, but the act is performed incorrectly in its details. There's a flaw in the ritual's execution.
Like saying the wrong words in a legal oath.
Precisely. Using outdated legal formulas in court, maybe getting the wording slightly wrong in a contract in a way that makes it ambiguous or invalid.
Or in that will example saying, I leave my house to my nephew, but you have 2 houses and 3 nephews.
Perfect. The utterance is too vague. The lack of clarity or precision in the verbal component itself creates a flaw, preventing the act, the specific bequest, from definitively taking effect. The execution was faulty.
Okay. And the last type of misfire?
That's B2, hitches, incomplete execution.
Hitches. So you start the procedure, but it doesn't get finished. It gets stuck.
Exactly. The procedure is attempted, it's initiated correctly, but it's not fully completed for some reason. It's aborted midway.
Like the betting example again?
Yes. I say, I bet you $10, which initiates the act.
But if the other person doesn't say, okay, or you're on, the bet isn't actually made.
Correct. The procedure requires that uptake, that completion by the other party, and it didn't happen. The sequence was interrupted.
Or saying, I will, in a marriage ceremony, but the other person then says, actually, no, I won't.
Right. The ceremony hits a major hitch. Or Austin's example of trying to open a library with the words, I declare this library opened, but then the key snaps in the lock or the ceremonial ribbon won't cut.
Ah, so the physical action that's part of the convention fails.
Yes. It shows that performatives are often parts of a larger sequence of actions, sometimes involving nonverbal elements, and their success depends on that sequence reaching its intended conclusion without such hitches.
Okay, so that covers misfires, misinvocations, misapplications, flaws, and hitches. In all these cases, the act is essentially null and void. It just doesn't happen successfully.
Correct. Now let's move on to the other major category, abuses.
Abuses. Remind me, this is where the act is formally completed. It takes effect on the surface.
Yes, the outward procedure is followed correctly.
But it's somehow hollow or insincere because the speaker's internal state doesn't match what the act implies.
Precisely. The act is performed, but it's done in bad faith or without the proper feelings or intentions.
What are the types of abuse?
Austin gives 2 main types here, labeled with Greek letters, A, gamma. The first is Ocho-1. Insincerities, lack of requisite thoughts, feelings, or intentions.
Insincerities. This sounds like the most common kind of abuse.
It probably is. The act is completed, the words are said, the procedure is followed, but the speaker lacks the genuine internal state, the belief, emotion, or intention that the convention or procedure is designed to express or embody.
Like saying, I congratulate you to your rival when you're actually really annoyed they won.
Exactly. You have performed the social act of congratulating. Someone observing would say you congratulated them, but it's insincere. The feeling the act implies isn't there.
Or saying, I advise you to sell when you secretly believe it's a terrible time to sell, maybe because you want to buy it cheaply yourself.
Right. You've performed the act of advising, but you don't actually believe it's good advice for the listener. It's insincere.
And the classic example, I promise, when you have absolutely no intention of keeping it.
That's the quintessential abuse, the false promise. The promise is made, an expectation is created, a commitment is outwardly undertaken.
But it's deceitful because the intention to fulfill it is missing from the start.
Yes. Again, it's not a lie, a false statement of fact, but it's an abuse of the performative act of promising. It's insincere.
Okay, so insincerity is the first type of abuse. What's the second?
The second is EP.2, non-fulfillments, not conducting oneself subsequently.
Non-fulfillment. So this is about what happens after the performative utterance.
Yes. It occurs when you simply don't follow through on the consequential conduct that the performative utterance initiated or committed you to.
So you say, I promised to do X, maybe even sincerely at the time.
Right, maybe you fully intended to.
But then later you just don't do X, you fail to follow through.
Exactly. You don't conduct yourself subsequently in the way the commissive act promise required.
Is this definitely an abuse of the original act, or is it more like a separate act of breaking the promise later? Austin wasn't entirely sure, was he?
He acknowledges it's a bit complex and debated. Is the unhappiness located in the original utterance, perhaps implying the intention was weak all along, or is it a failure in subsequent action? Regardless, it's clearly an unhappy outcome stemming from the initial performative. The commitment created by the words wasn't honored in deeds.
So insincerities are about the internal state at the time of uttering, and non-fulfillments are about the actions after the uttering. Both make the original act abused in some sense.
That's a good way to put it.
And Austin emphasizes that this whole framework of infelicities, misfires, and abuses isn't just for spoken words, right?
Absolutely not. It applies to all conventional or ceremonial acts, whether they involve language or are purely nonverbal.
Like a handshake to seal a deal.
Yeah. That handshake could misfire if, say, one person doesn't have the authority to make the deal. Misapplication. Or it could be an abuse if one person shakes hands while secretly intending to renege. Insincerity.
Or the symbolic handover of a key to represent giving someone property.
Same thing. That could misfire if it's the wrong key, or be an abuse if the giver doesn't actually intend for the recipient to have access. The principles apply broadly to conventional actions.
It feels like lawyers and ethicists must deal with these kinds of infelicities all the time, even if they don't use Austin's exact terms.
Oh, constantly. They're implicitly determining if an action was valid, no misfire, sincere, no abuse, or properly executed according to the relevant conventions. It's fundamental to law and social agreements.
Austin also takes care to point out what doesn't count as an infelicity under his specific doctrine, which helps clarify things.
Right. He draws some boundaries.
Mhm.
He distinguishes infelicities from other general ways actions can go wrong, what he calls the general ills of action,
Light.
like acting under duress or by accident or by mistake. If I sign a contract because someone is holding a gun to my head.
The contract might be voidable later, but the act of signing wasn't necessarily infelicitous in Austin's specific sense, like I didn't use the wrong pen or forget my name.
Exactly. The procedure might have been executed correctly, but the circumstances surrounding my consent, duress, make the act excusable or voidable for different reasons than, say, lacking the authority to sign in the first place. A misapplication infelicity.
What else does he exclude?
Another key exclusion is what he calls parasitic uses of language.
Parasitic, like feeding off the real thing.
Kind of. He means utterances in plays, poems, jokes, or when someone is just talking to themselves. Soliloquy.
So an actor on stage saying, I do, isn't actually getting married.
Right. The utterance isn't serious in the same way as a real wedding vow. It's using the language of marriage, but in a context where it doesn't have its normal performative force. It's etiolated or hollowed out, parasitic on the standard use.
And simple misunderstanding, like if I say, I promise, but you mishear me.
Austin largely excludes that too, from the doctrine of infelicities itself, although he obviously recognizes it's a major source of communication breakdown. Infelicities are more about problems with a conventional procedure or the speaker's relation to it, rather than just reception issues.
And it's important to remember these categories aren't always perfectly neat boxes, right? Real life is messy.
Absolutely. Austin himself stressed this. The categories can overlap, and cases can be ambiguous. His example of baptizing penguins is classic.
Right. Is that void because the procedure of baptism is inappropriate for penguins? AP2 misapplication, wrong kind of subject?
Or is it void because no recognized procedure for baptizing animals actually exists within that religious convention? AP1 misinvocation non-existent procedure.
You could probably argue it either way.
You could. And that ambiguity is fine. It reflects the complexity of language and convention. But the framework still helps.
How so?
Because understanding these categories, even with their fuzzy edges, helps us pinpoint why a particular communication or a conventional act might have failed or felt off. It moves us beyond just saying, well, that didn't work, or they misunderstood me.
It gives us a more precise vocabulary for analyzing the breakdown.
Exactly. And hopefully helps us be more deliberate and careful in our own communication to avoid causing these unhappy utterances ourselves.
Okay, so we've seen how Austin started by isolating these special performative utterances we're saying is doing, and then developed the doctrine of infelicities to explain how they can go wrong.
Right, that was the initial breakthrough.
But as he continued his work, as laid out in How to Do Things with Words, he realized that this initial distinction, the simple split between true-false constative statements and happy-unhappy performatives, was ultimately too rigid, wasn't it?
It was. He found it started to break down under closer examination. He came to a much more profound understanding that every utterance, even a simple statement of fact like the cat is on the mat, involves doing something in multiple layered ways.
So it's not just some special words that do things, but all words in different ways.
That's the big realization, yes. This led him to develop a more general and, I think, incredibly insightful theory of speech acts. He proposed that anytime we speak, we're simultaneously performing 3 distinct types of acts.
3 acts at once. Okay, this sounds like it's getting deeper. What are they?
He called them the locutionary act, the illocutionary act, and the perlocutionary act.
Locutionary, illocutionary, perlocutionary. Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one? The locutionary act.
The locutionary act is basically the saying itself, in the full normal sense. It's about the literal utterance, the sounds, the words, the grammar, their conventional dictionary meaning.
So it's the surface level, what was actually physically said, and its literal meaning.
Exactly. It's the act of saying something. Austin, being super meticulous, actually broke this down even further into 3 components, just to be absolutely precise.
Oh, wow. Okay, what are they?
First, there's the phonetic act. That's just the physical act of uttering certain noises, making the sounds like K-A-T, purely physical.
Like the raw sound waves.
Pretty much. Then there's the phatic act. This is uttering those noises as certain words belonging to a specific vocabulary, conforming to a specific grammar. So, saying the actual English words, the cat is on the mat. This is the part that can be mimicked or quoted directly.
Okay, sounds, and then words grammar. What's the third part of locution?
The rhetoric act. This is the act of using those specific words from the phatic act with a more or less definite sense and reference.
Sense and reference, meaning?
Meaning what you intend the words to mean in context and referring to what you intend to refer to. So in the cat is on the mat, the rhetoric act is using those words to refer to that specific cat and that specific mat and using the words of their standard English meanings.
Ah, so it includes the pointing to the world aspect of the literal meaning.
Yes. This rhetoric act is roughly what gets reported in indirect speech, like he said that the cat was on the mat.
So if someone shouts, "Shoot her," the locutionary act is just uttering those specific words with their standard dictionary meanings. Sounds, words, grammar, literal sense and reference.
Correct. The locutionary act is all about the content and the form of what is said. It establishes that baseline literal meaning. It's the foundation.
Okay, that makes sense. The act of saying something. What's the second act then? The illocutionary one.
Right, the illocutionary act. And this is arguably the most central concept in Austin's mature theory, and what we're really digging into. The illocutionary act is the act performed in saying something.
In saying, not by saying.
Exactly, in saying. It refers to the conventional force or the purpose of the utterance within the communication. It's about what you are doing with your words, beyond just their literal meaning.
Okay, so it's the doing part that applies to all utterances, not just the obvious performatives.
Precisely. This is where Austin truly shifts our perspective.
Yeah.
It's not just the literal meaning, locution, but the function of that utterance in its social context.
So back to shoot her, the locution is just those words. What's the illocution?
Well, in saying shoot her, you might be performing the illocutionary act of urging someone to shoot her, or advising them to, or perhaps ordering them to.
Ah, the force is different depending on the context and speaker's authority, even if the words are the same.
Exactly. Or in saying it is going to charge, maybe about a bowl,
Yeah.
you might be performing the illocutionary act of warning.
And in saying, "I shall be there," you might be promising.
Or maybe just stating an intention, which is also an illocutionary act. Other examples are things like asking, answering, informing, assuring, announcing a verdict, criticizing, making an appointment. The list is huge.
So the illocutionary act is the social action you're performing through the utterance.
Yes, by virtue of the conventional force attached to those words in that context.
What are the key characteristics of these illocutionary acts?
Well, crucially, they are conventional. We understand their force, what counts as a warning, a promise, an order, because they conform to accepted linguistic and social rules and conventions.
It's part of knowing the language and the culture.
Right. And, as we saw with performatives, many illocutionary acts can be made explicit using those performative verbs. I warn you that. I promise that. I order you to. Using the verb makes the illocutionary force explicit.
Okay. And how do these illocutionary acts actually take effect? How do they work?
Austin suggested three main ways they can take effect or secure uptake. First, simply by securing uptake in the sense of being understood. The audience has to hear the words locution and also understand the intended force, illocution. They need to grasp that it was a warning or an order or a promise.
So understanding the force is key.
Absolutely. Second, some illocutionary acts, particularly the classic performatives, conventionally take effect by changing reality in a specific way. I name this ship, makes it named. I pronounce you married, makes you married in the right circumstances. The act brings about a conventional consequence.
It alters the social or institutional fact.
Yes. And third, many illocutionary acts conventionally invite a response or sequel. An order invites obedience or disobedience. A question invites an answer. A promise invites reliance or fulfillment. An offer invites acceptance or rejection.
They set up expectations for what should happen next.
Exactly. So the illocutionary act is really about the function of your words, the conventional social action you perform by uttering them. It's distinct from the literal words themselves, locution, and also distinct from their ultimate consequences. Which brings us to the third type.
Okay, so we have locution, saying something, illocution, doing something and saying it. What's the third one? Perlocutionary.
Yes, the perlocutionary act. This is the act performed by saying something.
Saying. Okay, how's that different from in saying?
The perlocutionary act refers to the actual consequences or effects that the utterance produces on the feelings, thoughts, or actions of the audience, or the speaker, or other people. It's about the impact, the outcome achieved through the locutionary and illocutionary acts.
So it's the results, intended or unintended.
Precisely. It's the ripple effect. So by saying shoot her, locution, perhaps with the illocutionary force of an order, you might achieve the perlocutionary act of persuading someone to shoot her or getting them to shoot her.
Or maybe just frighten them or annoy them.
Exactly. Those effects, persuading, getting someone to act, frightening, annoying, are perlocutionary effects. They are achieved by means of saying, shoot her.
Okay. And by warning, it is going to charge.
You might achieve the perlocutionary effect of alarming the audience, or convincing them to flee, or maybe even causing them to panic and freeze.
And even by saying something simple like, the cat is on the mat.
You might bore someone terribly, or maybe mislead them if they were looking for the dog, or perhaps comfort a child who is worried about the cat. Those effects are perlocutionary.
What are the key features of these perlocutionary acts? How do they differ from illocutionary acts?
A crucial difference is that perlocutionary acts are generally not conventional in the same way illocutionary acts are. There isn't a conventional formula for, say, persuading someone.
Right. You can't just say, I hereby persuade you that, and make it happen.
Exactly. You can attempt to persuade, or attempt to alarm, or attempt to amuse, but you can't perform the act just by saying the words in the right way. The effect depends on the listener's reaction, psychology, the situation, many non-conventional factors.
So illocutionary acts, like promising, ordering, warning, are tied to linguistic conventions. But perlocutionary acts, like persuading, annoying, convincing, are the actual psychological or behavioral effects produced.
That's a very good way to summarize it. Perlocutionary acts are the effects or results, which may or may not be intended and are not guaranteed by the utterance itself.
And you could achieve the same perlocutionary effect without words, too, right?
Often, yes. You can intimidate someone, perlocutionary effect, by glaring or waving a weapon without saying anything. You can persuade someone with pictures or gestures. Illocutionary acts, on the other hand, are typically performed through language or conventional gestures that substitute for language.
So the perlocutionary act is about the impact of your words, the furthest ripple from the initial utterance.
Nicely put. Locution is the saying. Illocution is the doing and saying. Force. Perlocution is the effect achieved by saying.
Did Austin offer any way to help tell the difference, especially between illocution and perlocution? They seem like they could get confused.
He did, although he admitted the tests were a bit slippery because language is so flexible. He suggested looking at the prepositions in and by.
Okay.
He proposed that the formula, in saying X, I was doing Y, often points to an illocutionary act, Y.
Example.
In saying I will shoot him, I was threatening him. Threatening is the illocutionary act performed in making the utterance. The threatening constitutes the act itself in that moment.
Okay, in tends to signal illocution. What about by?
The formula, by saying X, I did Y, often indicates a perlocutionary act, Y.
Example.
By saying I will shoot him, I alarmed him. Alarming him is a consequence, an effect produced by the utterance. It describes the result.
In saying I threaten by saying I alarmed. That seems helpful.
It often is.
Yeah.
But as Austin cautioned, it's not foolproof. Sometimes by can be used to describe the means of performing an illocutionary act too.
Like,
By saying I do, I was marrying her. Here, marrying is the illocutionary act, or the larger ceremony containing it, and saying I do is the means by which it was performed. So you have to be careful.
so slippery tests, but useful guidelines for thinking about it.
Exactly. They help you focus on the distinction between the conventional force of the utterance, illocution, and the actual effects or consequences from the utterance, perlocution.
This is fascinating. So next time you reflect on a conversation, you could try to consciously separate these layers for any given utterance.
You absolutely could ask yourself, what did they literally say, locutionary act? What were they actually doing with those words, warning, requesting, promising, stating, illocutionary act? And what effect did their words actually have on me or others? Did they persuade, annoy, clarify, confuse? Perlocutionary act.
It really does offer a much deeper, more nuanced appreciation for the intricate mechanics of human interaction, doesn't it?
It really does. It moves way beyond just thinking about meaning as literal content.
Okay, so Austin moves from performatives versus constatives to this richer model of locution, illocution, and perlocution applying to all utterances.
Correct. A much broader and more powerful framework.
And with this refined understanding, he ultimately had to ditch that initial, simpler, performative, constative distinction entirely, didn't he? The idea of a clean split between true-false statements and happy-unhappy performatives.
Yes. He concluded it was unsustainable. He realized that stating itself, making a factual claim, is just one type of illocutionary act among many. It's an action performed in saying something. Just like promising or warning or ordering, it's not a fundamentally different kind of utterance.
So even saying the cat is on the mat isn't just passively describing, it's performing the illocutionary act of stating or asserting or informing.
Precisely. It has an illocutionary force. And this led him to rethink truth and falsity, too.
How so? If stating is just another illocutionary act, what happens to true-false?
He argued that truth and falsity aren't simple, objective qualities that statements just have. Instead, they are just one particular dimension of assessment for certain kinds of illocutionary acts, primarily statements or assertions.
A dimension of assessment, meaning how well the statement fits the facts.
Yes, but it's more nuanced than just a binary true-false. He saw it as evaluating how satisfactory an utterance is in relation to the facts, but also considering the context, the speaker's purpose, their intentions, the audience's needs.
So it's not always a clear yes-no, true-false?
Not always. Think about his example, Francis hexagonal.
Okay. Is that true or false?
Well, Austin would say it's rough. It's a simplification. Whether it's true enough or satisfactory depends entirely on the purpose.
If I'm a general planning troop movements on a large map, maybe hexagonal is a good enough approximation. It's true for that purpose.
Exactly. It's a useful, convenient simplification that works in that context. But if you're a geographer meticulously charting the coastline,
then Francis hexagonal is definitely not true. It's highly inaccurate, maybe even misleading.
right, its truth value, or satisfactoriness, is relative to the context and purpose. Or take his other example. Lord Raglan won the Battle of Alma.
Okay, a historical statement.
In a basic school textbook, it might be presented as a simple fact true enough for that level.
The simplified narrative.
But for a military historian analyzing the complex command decisions, troop movements, contributions of allies, the actual chaos of battle, calling it simply Lord Raglan won would be a massive exaggeration, maybe even false in its implications.
So truth-falsity becomes about fitness for purpose, appropriateness to context, rather than just a simple match to reality.
That's the idea. It's one way we assess certain speech acts, but not the only way, and it's more complex than it first appears.
Okay, so if the goal isn't just sorting into true-false versus happy-unhappy, what did Austin propose instead?
His next major step was to try and classify the huge number or variety of possible illocutionary forces. If stating is just one, what are the others? How can we group them?
He wanted to map out all the different things we do with words.
Essentially, yes. He wanted to reveal the incredible richness and functional diversity of language in action. He proposed 5 general classes of illocutionary acts.
5 main categories.
Yes, 5 broad families of illocutionary force. He was quick to acknowledge, though, that these categories weren't perfectly sealed off from each other. They can overlap, and specific verbs might fit into more than one class depending on the context.
That sounds realistic. Language is messy.
It is, but the classification is still incredibly useful for getting a handle on the range of linguistic actions we perform.
Okay, let's dive into these 5 classes. What's the first one?
The first class Austin proposed is 1, verdictives.
Verdictive sounds like giving a verdict, like in court.
Exactly, that's the core idea. Verdictives involve delivering a finding, official or unofficial, based on evidence or reasons. It's about reaching a judgment about something's value or factual status.
So a jury saying guilty or not guilty is a classic verdictive.
Perfect example. They're delivering a finding based on the evidence presented. An arbitrator's ruling. A judge holding that a certain point of law applies. A referee calling foul.
What about less formal examples?
Things like estimating the cost of something. I reckon it'll be about $500. Diagnosing an illness, the doctor diagnosed it as flu. Grading an exam, we graded the paper as a B+. Assessing a situation, I assess our chances as poor. Or even interpreting something, I interpret his silence as disagreement.
So any act that involves assessing evidence or reasons and delivering a judgment or finding?
That's the core idea. They are typically assessed as being right or wrong, correct or incorrect, fair or unfair, based on the evidence.
Okay, verdictives, judgments, findings. What's the second class?
The second class is 2, exercitives.
Exercitives, like exercising power or authority.
Precisely. Exercitives are about the exercising of powers, rights, or influence. They represent a decision or an advocacy that something is to be so, often changing the state of affairs through that exercise of authority or influence.
So this includes things like appointing someone.
Yes. A boss saying, I appoint you team leader, is an exercitive. It changes your status and responsibilities through their authority.
Or ordering someone. I order you to clean your room.
Definitely an exercitive. It uses authority, parental, military, etc., to create an obligation. Other examples Austin gives include appoint, degrade, demote, dismiss, like firing someone, order, command, sentence someone in court, fine them, grant a request or permission, levy a tax.
Lots of official-sounding acts.
Many are, but also things like vote for someone, name or choose something, claim something as yours, give or bequeath property, which also involves changing status.
So naming the ship, I name this ship, is an exercitive too.
Yes, Austin classifies naming there. Also, pardon, resign, even warn and advise can be exercitives when they come from a position of authority or influence, urging a course of action. Proclaim, annul, veto, dedicate something.
It seems like these acts directly change the world, or at least the social or institutional world, through power or influence.
That's a good way to think about them. They make something happen by deciding it should be so.
Okay. Verdictives, judgments. Exercitives, power moves. What's number 3?
The third class is 3, commissives.
Commissives, like making a commitment.
Exactly. Commissives commit the speaker to a certain course of action. They express an undertaking or bind the speaker in some way.
So the absolute classic example is I promise.
The quintessential commissive, yes, I promise to be there. You're binding yourself to future conduct.
What else falls into this category?
Other verbs like undertake, covenant, bind myself, contract to do something, give my word, vow, agree, consent to do something.
Betting seems like it would fit here too, I bet you.
Yes, betting involves committing yourself to pay up if you lose. Austin also includes things like declare my intention, or even just stating I intend to.
Really? I intend is a commissive. It feels weaker than a promise.
It is weaker, but Austin argues it still commits the speaker, albeit perhaps less formally, to a line of action or belief. By declaring your intention, you create an expectation and a sort of soft commitment.
Interesting. So commissives cover the whole range of binding oneself to future action, strongly or weakly.
That's the idea. Also includes things like dedicate myself to a cause, side with someone, espouse a view, or oppose something. These commit you to a stance or future behavior aligned with that stance.
Okay, commissives, commitments by the speaker. 4th class.
Number 4 is 4, behabitives.
Behabitives. Sounds like it relates to behavior.
It does, but specifically it's a rather diverse group concerned with our reactions to other people's behavior and fortunes, and also our expressions of attitudes towards past or imminent conduct, our own or others.
Okay, reactions and attitudes about behavior. Like what?
Think about social niceties and reactions. I apologize for my bad behavior. I thank you for your helpful behavior.
Right, those are reactions to past actions.
Exactly. Or I congratulate you on your success, reacting to fortune behavior. I commiserate or condole with you on your misfortune. I criticize your actions. I applaud or commend your performance.
So expressing social attitudes and feelings about conduct and outcomes?
Yes. Also includes things like welcome or bless or curse someone, attitudes towards them, making a toast, or even more confrontational ones like dare, defy, protest, or challenge someone's actions or statements.
It feels like this category has a strong social and emotional flavor.
Very much so. They often involve expressing feelings or navigating social relationships based on behavior, and because they're often about expressing attitudes.
They seem particularly open to insincerity, like the insincere congratulation we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Behavitives have a special scope for the infelicity of abuse, insincerity, because there's often a gap between the socially expected expression and the speaker's actual inner feelings.
Okay, behavitives, social reactions, and attitudes. What's the fifth and final class?
The fifth class is 5, expositives.
Expositives, like exposition, explaining things.
That's the core idea. Expositives are used to make plain how our utterances fit into the ongoing discourse, the course of an argument or conversation. They clarify how we are using words or signal the role of our statement within the larger discussion. They are expository or metacommunicative.
So they help structure the conversation itself.
Precisely. They guide the listener on how to take what you're saying. For instance, when I say, first, I will argue that, or to illustrate this point, or I conclude that.
You're explicitly telling me the function of the words that follow.
Yes. You're signposting the structure of the argument or explanation. Other examples include verbs like affirm, deny, state, report, describe, when used to signal the nature of the utterance, emphasize, answer, ask, testify, admit, concede, postulate, define, agree, maintain, support.
It's interesting that state, affirm, report, describe are in here. Those sound like the old constitutive statements.
Exactly. And that's Austin's point. Even these seemingly simple statement-making verbs are actually performing an illocutionary act, the act of stating, affirming, reporting, etc., which has a specific function within the discourse, e.g. fitting it into an argument, presenting it as fact. They aren't just passively reflecting reality. They are actively presenting information in a particular way.
So expositives are about clarifying the role and use of our language within the flow of communication.
That's a great summary. They help organize and guide the interaction.
Wow. Predictives, exercitives, commissives, behavitives, and expositives. That's an incredibly rich map of the things we do with words.
It really is. And seeing them laid out like this just underscores that fundamental point. Words are not just passive labels for things. They are active, powerful tools we use constantly to navigate, shape, and create our social world. They carry all these different forces to perform actions, establish relationships, make commitments, express attitudes, and structure our interactions. Hashtag, tag, outro.
Well, deep divers, we have really journeyed through some truly mind-bending concepts today, haven't we?
We certainly have covered a lot of ground.
We started by grappling with that really revolutionary idea that words can actually do things, not just describe them, directly challenging that old philosophical assumption.
Undermining the descriptive fallacy.
Exactly. Then we explored all the ways these performative acts can go wrong, diving into Austin's doctrine of infelicities.
Those fascinating categories of misfires, where the act is null and void.
Right, like misinvocations or misapplications.
And abuses, where the act happens, but it's somehow hollow or insincere.
Like false promises or insincere congratulations.
Then we broadened our perspective, realizing that the simple performative constitutive split wasn't enough.
Right, we moved to understanding that every utterance involves that complex interplay of three acts.
The locutionary act, what is literally said.
The illocutionary act, what is done in saying it, its conventional force.
And the perlocutionary act is what is achieved by saying it, the actual effects and consequences.
And finally, we tried to map out that crucial illocutionary dimension, exploring Austin's 5 general categories of illocutionary force.
Verdictives, making judgments. Exercitives, exercising power. Commissives, making commitments.
Behavitives, expressing attitudes and reactions. And expositives, guiding arguments and clarifying usage. It's quite a toolkit.
It really is. And the profound aha moment here, I think, for anyone listening, is realizing just how simplistic the traditional idea of language, that it primarily just describes a true or false reality, really is.
Yeah, it misses so much of what's actually going on.
Our words are dynamic, they're context-dependent tools, constantly shaping relationships, creating commitments, producing consequences. Understanding this framework Austin provides really gives you profound insight into the hidden mechanics of human communication.
It allows you to be maybe more deliberate, more conscious in your own speech.
And definitely more astute, more perceptive in interpreting what others are doing with their words.
Absolutely. This isn't just abstract theory for philosophers sitting in armchairs. It's a practical toolkit for understanding and navigating the social world around you every single day.
Couldn't agree more.
So, for your provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week, next time you speak, or maybe even as you listen to others, try to consciously consider not just what is being said, the locution.
But what is being done with those words? The illocution.
Are you or they merely stating a fact? Or are you actually warning, promising, challenging, criticizing, commanding, apologizing, maybe even subtly shaping a belief or trying to produce a particular emotional effect? Perlocution.
And what impact are you truly creating, intended or not?
Once you start listening with this new speech act ear, you might find that the world, and especially your interactions within it, will never quite sound the same again.
Indeed. The silent power embedded in our words is often the loudest force in the room.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into speech act theory. We hope this has given you a fresh and maybe powerful perspective on your everyday language.
Hope it sparks some thoughts.
Until next time, keep diving deep.